The pyramids of Giza, an outer suburb of Cairo, are enormous. You might have seen pictures of them, or read about them, or watched documentaries about them. But until you have stood in front of these massive stones of mountains of stone, you cannot grasp the immensity of it all. The largest of the three was built for King Khufu, and originally it measures about 751 feet from one corner to another, and about 479 feet in height. It has been estimated that about 3 million stones were used, weighing 30 tons each. If each were cut into cubes about a foot square, put side by side around the coast of Australia, it would cover the whole thing and still have enough left to cover the mainland US. The border of the mainland US. So, which came first, these pyramids or the flood? According to accepted chronology of Egypt, it was built 300 years before the flood. According to the evidence, it was built 300 years before the flood. When you think of pyramids, what comes to mind? Egypt.
Slaves, Joseph, and the Israelites.
So, Egypt. So, in the Bible, an event that we think of when we think of Egypt, the event that comes to mind more than over any other event is Exodus. According to 1 Kings 6:1, the Exodus took place in 1445 BC or 1446. And if you slot that into Egyptian history, it goes into the 18th dynasty. Of the Exodus event, the most prominent, the most memorable event for the Egyptians was probably the 10 plagues. First, the Nile River was turned into blood. That was a direct attack against the river god Hapi, which is a god of fertility. And then, after that, frogs were everywhere. But once the frogs are gone, the flies and the lice play. And these are not just normal flies, these sting people. And then, of course, the animals die off. And this was a direct attack, once again, against one of their gods, two of their gods. Female cow, Hathor, and also the Serapis bull. So it was a direct attack against their gods. And then the boils. And then after that, a very unnatural event happened in Egypt. Rain is very rare in Egypt, let alone hail mixed with fire. So it destroyed any livestock or any servants that were left out in the field in contradiction to God's direct command. And it damaged greatly the Egyptian agriculture. And then, what was the next plague? The plagues of the locust. Locusts came and destroyed everything that was left standing from the hail. There was no greenery left in Egypt. All the food, everything completely gone. Since the people of Egypt were ready to despair, the scourges that had already fallen upon them seemed almost beyond endurance, and they were filled with fear for the future. This picture some prophets. And then the ninth plague struck at the very heart of the Egyptian religion. It was the Egyptian god Ra, sun god. And this was the last straw. And Pharaoh said, okay, you can go. But of course he changed his mind. Looking at the situation of Egypt, according to the Bible, the nation has sustained a great loss in the death of their cattle. Many of the people had been killed by the hail. The forests were broken down and the crops destroyed. The whole land was threatened with starvation. Princes and courtiers pressed about the king, angrily demanded, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? This is just depicting what's happening in Egypt at the time. So everything that Egyptians held dear is completely destroyed, wiped out. Their food, livestock, land, vegetation, their economy, even their dependence upon their God. There's only one thing that's left that they hold dear, their family. That is the very next target of the plagues. all the firstborns of the Egyptian households are destroyed. But on the contrary, the Jews do not, the Hebrews. They still celebrate that event. So once the final okay was given, the Israelites needed no second bidding. They took off. Boom, they're gone. They're gone in a haste. And then, once they reached the Red Sea, the Pharaoh's army was on their track. As the Bible tells us, the Red Sea was opened up, the people crossed, and the Egyptian army that followed. According to the Bible, it says, "And the waters returned, and covered the chariots and the horsemen, even all the hosts of Pharaoh that went in after them into the sea. There remained not so much as one of them." So the entire military of Egypt was wiped out. So, if this is true, if the Bible's account is true, if Moses was true, was honest, shouldn't there be some archaeological evidence? 2 million people leave, all cattle wiped out, and whatever was left of the cattle, the Israelites took with them. All the vegetation destroyed, buildings destroyed, and the nation is at the brink of starvation. Economic crisis. And not only that, the families are destroyed. I mean, like, the firstborn is destroyed, and the entire Egyptian army is annihilated. If this is true, shouldn't there be any archaeological evidence? According to the widely accepted chronology, there is no evidence for such an event. Not only that, there's only contradictions. The 18th dynasty was one of the most prominent, the most well-recorded, the most, flourishing dynasty. And it cannot account for such an event as Exodus. And the problem with this is the fact that if Moses was so wrong about Exodus, the event that he was contemporary with, how in the world could he trust him in his account of Genesis? Is that valid? If you were to go by the scientific evidence, the Bible would be thrown out. It would be useless. The Bible would be, our faith is futile. Why do we care? Why are we even at Weimar? If the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous possibly do? Any ideas? I mean, yes, we have to have faith, but faith in what? Faith in a bunch of lies that this old man somehow conjured up. And thankfully, I don't see anything flying at me, but it's a thought. It is a widely accepted view. That is, if we are to accept the traditional Egyptian chronology. In the field of archaeology, especially in the Egyptology, there's a major contention in regards to how you write the Egyptian history. There's two major views, the traditional and the revised chronology. Let's take a look. All our archaeologists would like to think that Egyptian chronology is set, or the way they like to put it is astronomically fixed. But they know better. In putting together the chronology, the history of Egypt, they have three sources. Writings of ancient history, inscription on statues and artifacts and temple walls, and papyruses. If it's astronomically fixed, or if it's sure, they should all agree. But they don't. Because the inscriptions on the walls and stuff, they're not for historical accuracy. They're there to immortalize, magnify, or inflate the deeds of the pharaohs. They're not historical accuracy at all. And when the first historian, Manetho, put together the Egyptian chronology as we know it today, he put it together as if Egypt was always a single, successive line of monarchs. But something is ignored. Eusebius wrote, "Several Egyptian dynasties ruled at the same time. It was not a succession of kings occupying the throne one after the other, but several kings reigning at the same time in different regions." Okay? Let's say there's a line of 40 people. Well, some of them are reigning at the same time.
Overlapping.
What would that the long time run?
Shorten.
Shorten it.